Well, this has been a week, hasn't it? PMSNBC is just falling all over itself, reporting almost hourly with changing headlines that the end of Trump is here. It's over. He's done. He's down in the polls. The voters want DeSantis. Even the Christian right has moved away from Donald Trump. The party is moving away from Donald Trump. He can't get anybody to come to his rallies, etc., etc., etc. You know, it's usually been my experience when someone is, quote, no longer a threat, that they're irrelevant, they get ignored. The fact that they can't shut up about Donald Trump means he's not irrelevant, he's not going away, and he's not fading away.
Let's get ready to rumble! You can't handle the truth.
Thanks to Matt Gaetz putting McCarthy's feet to the fire, we actually have a Speaker of the House who right now is governing in a very conservative manner and kicking Adam Schiff for brains as well as Eric Swalwell off of the Intel committees was, well, smart. And we're going to get into that because let's be honest, Kevin McCarthy, like a boss, he owned the media this week when they were pushing back on him, saying, you're going to kick these men off the Intel. This is just about petty politics. They never mention how many people Nancy Botox Pelosi on the Republican side kicked off of committees. And the fact that, well, they want to make a big thing about George Santos. He's a liar, and you're allowing him to serve on committees. And, of course, McCarthy set the record straight, said, look, a guy serving on a committee is one thing. Serving on the Intelligence Committee, that's something else.
You ask me a question. When I answer it, it's the answer to your question. You don't get to determine whether I answer your question or not, okay? In all respect. Thank you. No, let's answer her question. You just raised a question. I'm going to be very clear with you. The Intel Committee is different. You know why? Because what happens in the Intel Committee, you don't know. What happens in the Intel Committee, although the secrets are going on in the world, other members of Congress don't know. What did Adam Schiff do as the chairman of the Intel Committee? What Adam Schiff did, use his power as a chairman and lie to the American public. Even the Inspector General said it. When Devin Nunes put out a memo, he said it was false. When we had a laptop, he used it before an election to be politics and say that it was false and said it was the Russians. When he knew different, when he knew the Intel, if you talk to John Radcliffe, DNI, he came out ahead of time and says there's no intel to prove that, and he used his position as chairman, knowing he has information the rest of America does not, and lied to the American public. When a whistleblower came forward, he said he did not know the individual, even though his staff had met with him and set it up. So no, he does not have a right to sit on that. But I will not be like Democrats and play politics with these, where they removed Republicans from committees and all committees. So yes, he can serve on a committee, but he will not serve on Intel because it goes to the national security of America. And I will always put them first, all right? And if you want to talk about Swalwell, let's talk about Swalwell, because you have not had the briefing that I had. I had the briefing and Nancy Pelosi had the briefing from the FBI. The FBI never came before this Congress to tell the leadership of this Congress that Eric Swalwell had a problem with a Chinese spy until he served on Intel. So it wasn't just us who were concerned about it. The FBI was concerned about putting a member of Congress on the Intel Committee that has the rights to see things that others don't because of his knowledge and relationship with a Chinese spy. They brought it to the works of the leaders. I've got that briefing. So I do not believe he should sit on that committee. And I believe there's 200 other Democrats that can serve on that committee. So this has nothing to do with Santos. Santos is not on the Intel Committee. But you know what? Those voters elected Schiff, even though he lied. Those voters elected Swalwell, even though he lied to the American public too. So you know what? I'll respect his voters too, and they'll serve on committees. But they will not serve on a place that has national security relevance because integrity matters to me.
Boom, like a boss. But I've got a take on this that's going to be different than anything that you've heard regarding this, even within conservative media, and I'll get to it. Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican from Florida, introduced an interesting bill this week, the Preventing Extreme Negligence with Classified Information License, or the Pencil Resolution. Now, this pencil resolution would absolutely not allow Adam Schiff to ever have access to any classified documents ever again. Now, again, I give it to Matt Gaetz, the Preventing Extreme Negligence with Classified Information License. Pencil is the acrostic on that. But I think that's a quiet throwback to one Rush Limbaugh. Because it was Rush Limbaugh who used to refer to Adam Schiff as pencil neck. That was the adjective description that Rush always hung on Adam Schiff for brain. So the Pencil Act. It's clever. I'm sure Team Gaetz had to come up with how to actually build that an acronym, but nonetheless, it's interesting. Now look, anybody with half a brain understands that Adam Schiff for 2 years lied about Russian collusion. He knew from the get-go this was disinformation, that it was disinformation that Hillary Rodham Clinton's campaign paid for, that there was absolutely no validity whatsoever to the Steele dossier, and yet he would come out almost daily and lie to the media, lie to the American people that he had seen evidence that they were not yet privy to. George Snuffleupagus actually asked him that, and of course he answered in the affirmative that he had the smoking gun, he had the witnesses and the whistleblowers, and they were protecting their identity, etc., etc., etc. For 2 years. Lied. And of course, the infamous phone call where he was set up by a couple of radio DJs pretending to be Russians, wanting to give him video footage of Donald Trump naked in a hotel room urinating on Barack Misopotamus's pillow. Yeah, okay. This guy should not be around any type of national security classified information. But as we find out, between Joe Biden, having the information literally stored in his garage, in a house. We don't even know all the places they could be because the FBI didn't kick his doors down like they did Donald J. Trump. And then we have, somehow inadvertently Mike Pence had one. Have you thought about this? Colonel Sanders, who came up with Kentucky Fried Chicken, that incredible secret recipe that he has. I can't remember. Is it 8 spices or is it 11? But whatever it is, they've managed to keep that a secret like forever. Coca-Cola has had many imitators, many knockoffs, but there's only one original Coca-Cola classic formula, and Coca-Cola's got it. And no matter how hard these other colas have tried, and you think about how science is so evolved today that they can't take Coke into a lab and actually break it down and come up with the formula that way, but they haven't been able to do it. And Coca-Cola's managed to hang on to their formula for, a century and a half. Maybe the United States government should entrust Colonel Sanders and Coca-Cola with classified information if they really want things kept secret. It's just a thought off the top of my head. But Eric Swalwell, Fang Fang, the Chinese hooker prostitute spy that he was having sexual relations with. And we think it's a good idea that he serve on an it was in the past. It was in the past. There are some things you do in your past that disqualifies you to do certain things in your future. That's just the reality of life, boys and girls. And if these people who are constantly talking about, we must protect democracy. That's like listening to Joe Biden talking about our Second Amendment and saying things like, You guys with your Second Amendment saying that this is about, once in a while the tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of patriots, as if, the Second Amendment is there for you to stand up against the government. You can't stand up against the government just with your Second Amendment. You don't have tanks. You don't have F-15 fighter jets. So, which is it, Mr. President? Do we need heavy artillery to defend ourselves from the government? Or can a bunch of unarmed Trump supporters almost topple the government of the strongest country in the world on an infamous date in January? They didn't have any F-15s. They didn't have any tanks. They didn't have any heavy artillery. So if you're saying that our founding fathers and giving us our Second Amendment rights, the right to keep and bear arms, shall not be abridged, which it was given not for us to be able to go rabbit hunting, but rather to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government, and you're saying that no longer applies because of the weaponry you have at your disposal, which apparently you're also insinuating by threat that you would actually use that on American citizens. So you're saying that we would have to have the same firepower as the military, but yet you're trying to convince America that a few thousand Trump supporters at a rally with FBI and other intel people mixed into the crowd, stirring things up. But, I didn't say that. The New York Times did. But that was almost the end of our democracy and our government. You even had solemn remembrances on that infamous date for January. But which is it? Which is it? Can't have it both ways. But the media and the liberals love to try to have it both ways, don't they? Oh, that said, I've got a take on what is happening with Kevin McCarthy standing up and what's going on. It's a little different than what you're getting anywhere else in conservative media. Now, with McCarthy stepping up, and he really has followed through on all of the concessions that he made to Matt Gaetz and those 12 patriots who said, not so fast, you getting into the speaker chair and just returning us to status quo republicanism. I mean, he's standing strong. We got a lot of positive press regarding Ron DeSantis. You got just enough pushback from the media to make it look like we can't have this guy. Is it all working together against Trump? And I mean this way. And I advised through this channel, if anybody on Team Trump could get him this analysis, this insight, it would be helpful and beneficial to him. That he needs to come up with some big policy ideas. That day he took that escalator ride at Trump Tower to announce his candidacy. And immediately the political world was set on fire. But the issue that he was running on was securing the borders, the wall. Mr. President, you need another issue. This can't just be your laundry list of everything that Joe Biden has done wrong and how somehow you were wronged and we need to make this right. I get it. I feel your frustration, but you can't make your campaign about this. You've got to get on a couple of issues that will immediately re-energize people. And that's not going to be easy because Ron DeSantis, as a sitting active governor, is in a position of, quote, power and authority and can project an image of actually getting things done, making things happen. Now, we understand that everything that he's accomplished in Florida, especially during the pandemic, was not initially on his playlist of things to do. He was following instinctually, along with the rest of the governors in this country, to clamp down, to create his own little dictatorship. And he was falling right in line with the Cuomos and the DeWittmers and the DeWiners and even Gavin Newsom. It wasn't until a pastor was arrested and taken out of his church on national television in Tampa, Florida, that DeSantis' people went to him and said, "This is not a good look. You don't want to be seen as the governor arresting pastors." And it was after that, things turned in Florida, and he reopened the beaches, and he reopened public gatherings, etc., etc., etc. The state moved him right. He didn't move the state right. You people that right now are thinking about, it needs to be Ron DeSantis. That is the setup. That is the setup. Just like right now, McCarthy kind of governing like a conservative. That's the setup. That's the setup. McCarthy will govern like a conservative from now to the election. The plan is this: get the nomination to DeSantis. Create this a little bit lower rhetoric MAGA agenda. And then, once they win, boom, back to the status quo. Back to Bush-style Republicanism. Back to McCain-style Republicanism, which means never-ending wars so that Lindsey Graham can keep having endless wet dream fantasies about all the death and carnage we're responsible for around the globe. Because remember, he was John McCain's special friend. And back to saying things that the Christian right will not have said to, but not actually ever really engaging or doing anything about it. DeSantis was part of JAG, which meant he was in the military, which meant he went around the world getting our military personnel, in particular officers, out of trouble in foreign lands. So he is well acquainted with how to go into a room, close a door, and whatever has to be done to make a problem, quote, go away. Just like the deep state has been doing literally for over a century. So the fact that they're giving him to us as the, look, we know you don't want a George Bush, you want a Donald Trump, but here's Ron DeSantis, and he is Donald Trump, only without the caustic tones and tweets. Bullhawk. It's a setup. It's a setup. And McCarthy is part of the setup. What they're trying to get you to do is take a look around and say, hey, you know what? We're still getting our populist agenda through even without Trump. We don't need Trump. Bum, ba-dum, bum. That's the strategy. That's the strategy. The problem is, it's not that they are genuinely on board with the Trump agenda, only wrapping it up, shall we say, in a little different personality. No, nay. It's a ruse. It's fake. And if they win and get into power, they will become George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush. It will be status quo all over again. It'll be middle-of-the-road republicanism all over again. It will be no difference between the left and right, which technically there isn't anyway. The globalist ruling class, whether they call themselves Republican or Democrat, will then be firmly back in power. And I'm not saying that Ron DeSantis, if he were elected, would do a horrible job. He'll do a few things that you and I would like. But for the most part, he going to do what the establishment wants done. Period. Period. See, Donald Trump is a problem because Donald Trump wants to dismantle the military-industrial complex. We would not be funding a proxy war with Russia right now if Trump were in the Oval Office. So, Mr. President, you need a bold agenda. Flip the whole script. Get the Republican Party talking about something they never thought they would have to talk about. How about health care for everybody? So it's getting interesting. It's getting real, but don't be fooled. Be glad that we're seeing certain things go the way they are right now. But understand that's so that you and I let our guard down and embrace them as the real thing, and they're not the real thing. They're a knockoff, hoping to knock off the guy that is the real thing.